Welcome to Alive with Love, and our first one that we're doing for the new year, which is weird because it's almost the end of January, Julie. But we've been really busy with something we're going to be announcing hopefully sometime soon. But anyway, it's great to be back, and we have a burning question today, right, Julie?
It's great to see everybody for the first time this year. Happy New Year, everybody. We do have a burning question, Gretchen, and that question is, where the hell are the Epstein files?
Yes, that is exactly what we would like to answer the question about. So if you have questions too about where the Epstein files are, you can chat with us on Instagram or Twitter and send in your questions. And we're going to be debating a lot of what we think about where they are so far. But first, let's start with this poll that I thought was fascinating that CNN put out a couple of weeks ago before all hell broke loose with the rest of the world. Just 6% of Americans are satisfied with how much the U.S. has released so far with the Epstein files. 6%. I mean, I don't know if you could find any other topic right now that would mean that 94% are not satisfied with anything in our world.
Nickelback is more popular than how this administration is treating the release of the Epstein files. I want to know, I have a question. If you're one of these 6%, please let us know who you are, because I'm very curious to know who is actually satisfied with how much has been released of the Epstein files by the president's, not the president, but by the administration's own admission. Is it 1% of all files have been released so far? I mean, it's some tiny, minuscule amount. They were all supposed to have been released last year. None of that has happened. It's not like this came out of nowhere. Obviously, the legislation was passed. They had a month to get it together. Strangely, from what I've read, the Southern District of New York has deployed all of their staff to going through the Epstein files. God forbid there's actually anything else happening in the Southern District that might require the attention of the United States Attorney's Office. But what's fascinating to me is that we have now gone to not war with Venezuela, but we've now invaded Venezuela. There's been all the things happening in your home state of Minneapolis right now, Gretchen, Minnesota. There are so many other things happening, including our potential invasion of Greenland that never took place. I guess to try to deflect attention away from the Epstein files, but where are the Epstein files? It's not like people are forgetting it. We certainly haven't forgotten, and most people haven't forgotten. So where are they?
Yeah. And back to your point about the Southern District, I heard 500 to 600 lawyers every single day are going through all of these papers. But the Department of Justice still has time to potentially indict Don Lemon for going to that church protest in Minnesota. Indict, all of these other enemies of the Trump administration, put out ridiculous statements about what's happening in Minnesota. So to your point, like, do they have any other business to do? We sure hope they do, but we don't think they're actually doing the business that they should be doing. And they're certainly not getting the Epstein files. By the way, it was a law that Congress passed with only one no vote, so almost unanimous, that they have to do this. And do they think, it's very emblematic to me, Julie, that this whole process, as we've discussed ad nauseum, has been like the exact opposite of how you handle crisis PR. It will go down in history as one of the worst political moves ever. But what's emblematic about this latest thing about not releasing any of the documents, hardly any of them, you could go back and look at everything that this administration has done over the last year with regard to this topic. And I think the overwhelming theme is they think the story's going to keep going away by the drips and dribbles of what they do. And it's not. I got a news flash for them. It's not. So they send Todd Blanche down to interview Ghislaine Maxwell, thinking they could control that whole thing. She would exonerate Trump and, whatever else, and that the story would go away. They think that by highlighting Bill Clinton when they first released, some of those documents that everyone would go, oh yeah, this is all about Bill Clinton. Let's just have this story go away. And we could go on and on about everything that has happened where they think that somehow releasing little drips and drabs that the American public's going to forget. And it's had the exact opposite effect. Now you have 94% of the American public not satisfied with a story that could have been inside the Beltway if it was taken care of immediately. Now it's gone out to the public conscience where everyone knows about this story and they want answers.
There's so much more about this that I think is just troubling. And there was a poll done, maybe not a poll, but interviews done with members of Congress who voted for the release of the Epstein files, who now are saying, we're not going to follow up on that. It's not important. I know we passed this law, but it's just not relevant. And to me, you look survivors in the eye. You told survivors that you're going to be there for them. You told survivors that you believed in them and understood what they had gone through over the last 10, 20, 30 years. And yet, unfortunately, it seems to not matter. And again, it seems to be all about kind of the back and forth and the partisan basketball and all this nonsense, as opposed to just saying, wait a second, we looked survivors in the eye when they came to Washington. We promised them that we would make this right. And we haven't made it right. And the Justice Department hasn't made it right. And this administration hasn't made it right. And even as they're refusing to release the Epstein files, who was the White House feting on Saturday night? Brett Ratner, who directed the Melania movie. And Brett Ratner, of course, has been alleged to have engaged in horrible toxic behavior. And there are plenty of survivors in Hollywood of Brett Ratner's behavior. But now he's welcomed into the White House.
Well, we shouldn't be shocked by that. I mean, I know it's despicable, but
Mike Tyson,
I mean,
who spent some time in prison for rape, we shouldn't be shocked by his rehabilitation. He was at the White House on Saturday night, mixing it up with the masters of the universe, whether it's the head of Amazon, the head of Amazon Studios, the head of, Tim Cook from Apple, the Queen of Jordan. I mean, all of these, Erica Kirk, all of these people are hanging out with people who've been accused credibly, and some of them convicted of sexual violence, even as the survivors of the Epstein files are not seeing any justice. It's such a bad look. And as you said about crisis comms, somebody who does this for a living, my head hurts because professionally speaking, it is such an awful way to handle this. It just is such a poke in the eye to survivors and to women and men who care about those survivors and who just want the truth out there. I don't get it. I don't understand why this makes any sense. Forget morally, it's not morally right, but politically why this makes any sense to do.
Yeah, let me just say though that I did a big interview for this Australian documentary on the Epstein files a couple of weeks ago. It's going to come out at the end of February, which I'm sure we'll be talking about here on a Live with Love. Australia has been sort of at the forefront, just like the US with the whole Me Too movement. I went to Sydney 3 years ago and did a big, speaking tour for one of their festivals there. And we've had a lot of survivors from Australia who've reached out to us, who've been very public about what was going on inside of their government with the way in which they were harassed, assaulted, et cetera. And one thing I said in that interview was that amidst all of this negative news about where the hell are the Epstein files, right? And the negative news about Trump lifting up convicted, in some cases, sexual offenders. Don't even get me started about the Tate brothers. Amidst all that, when you look at what really ignited action on the Epstein files and really got members of Congress to that point, other than Trump telling them it was okay to vote yes, it's the survivors. So there's this incredible irony going on that while Trump's lifting up sexual predators, it's the survivors, on the other hand, that are driving the activity of getting these files released. And how you and I get asked this all the time. How can those two things be true at the same time? How did we pass 2 bipartisan bills into law during a time when a lot of people feel like a lot of things are rolling back for women and how we view sexual assault and harassment in this society. So I want to make sure that we bring up the positive, that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the movement, if it wasn't for the work that you and I and so many other people do on a daily basis, and if it wasn't for, most importantly, these survivors who have come out at all costs to their own privacy and backlash and all of that. They are the reason that we are at this point today where we are saying, where the hell are the Epstein files? And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
It's true. And I have to say, and I'm going to take the media to task on this, you wave a shiny object in front of them, and Trump knows this so well, and the Justice Department knows this so well. You wave a few other shiny objects in front of them, and they talk about something else. Meanwhile, there are women who were once girls who were trafficked, as many of them as underage girls, to certainly by and to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, with whom Todd Blanche is having this, again, a chummy relationship with, who now is apparently petting dogs or puppies in her plush, relatively speaking, prison camp down in South, I forgot where it is, like Texas or somewhere. But in the meantime, these women have been living with this their entire lives, because some of them didn't really have much of a life before they were trafficked, because they were so young when this all began. The question is, they were trafficked to somebody, and we don't know who those somebodies are, because Jeffrey Epstein is dead, because Ghislaine Maxwell will not say, and because the Justice Department, which knows, also will not tell us.
Well, they'll probably redact all those names, because remember, President Trump, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene, said he didn't want any of this stuff released because it would hurt people. Not to mention the people that have already been hurt. Those are called survivors. So, who is it? Look, we both know that there's going to be people on both sides of the fence. This is apolitical. Our issues are apolitical. We always say that. But I think one of the burning questions, and then I want to get to some Instagram and Twitter questions, but to me, and I know I'm opening up a can of worms here, but to me, one of the biggest questions is, has the play to take over Greenland, which was ridiculous, has the play to do the Venezuela thing, even though we know it wasn't about drugs, really, it was about changing over leadership there, to his second in command. So what has that done? Well, have all these other antics, the ICE raids in Minnesota, do we believe that all those things were to try to stop the groundswell of releasing the Epstein files? That's the loaded question.
I know what I think. I mean, the answer clearly is yes. They were taking on water. Venezuela was an added bonus. We can have a whole different non-lift our voices conversation about why we went into Venezuela. I have some thoughts. Greenland, I have some thoughts. ICE, of course, was just a huge overstep, I think, from a mandate that he believed he got with the election. But the truth of the matter is, although the press is doing its level best to not talk about the Epstein files anymore, I mean, I can't remember when the Epstein files were last on the front page of the New York Times or led the evening news, or certainly any of the cable news shows. People have not forgotten. And more importantly, survivors have not forgotten. And the part that kills me about these survivors, and this is just, when I think about it in these terms, it actually really makes me want to cry, is these women have been let down by everybody for so long. They have been let down by the adults in their lives. They've been let down by certainly Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, who I think they trusted, to at least Ghislaine Maxwell, to protect them. They were let down by the prosecutors whom they tried to get justice from. They've been let down by this administration. They've been let down by the Justice Department. They've been let down by every administration, actually, because every administration in the last 20 years has failed to do anything on this. But now they're being let down by the press, and they're being let down by us. And I don't mean us, you and me. I mean us collectively, because we are, again, people who promised finally to do right by them. And at the end of the day, they still have not gotten justice, even though there have been laws passed. that would make them get justice. And still, there hasn't been enough public pressure to make Congress and this president stand by the fact that they both passed and signed this law into effect. I mean, I don't know how these women go on. My courage, the courage they have, my heart and my hat is off to them. But it's just amazing how much they've been let down by everybody, including the media and all of us who have not stayed on this the way we should have over the last 2 months.
Yeah, but okay, as a journalist, I agree with you, but I will also defend that Trump, unfortunately, is a master of flooding the news market with all of these kinds of stories. And because it seems that everything he does gets more outrageous as far as like amping up the media coverage, right? Like when you say you're going to send in the military, maybe in a true social post to take over Greenland, and NATO is completely in disarray, and you're offending every ally America's ever had, the news media has to freaking cover that, right?
Well, yes, but
and they're not going to say, and by the way, we're still working on the Epstein files. I mean, every time that I've been on CNN or MSNBC since all this other stuff started happening this month, when we go to commercial, the first thing out of my mouth is, and where the hell are the Epstein files, right? And I've said it on air too. So I think people haven't forgotten. And that poll we showed earlier, only 6% of the American public think that they're satisfied with how much has been released. That means 94% of us are not. I can't think of anything else where we agree that much other than, well, I bet it wouldn't even be that the sky's blue anymore in this environment that we live in. So I do think that this story will come back. And yes, I do think the media needs to refocus, but they can't right now because they only have so much time. And Trump keeps flooding the market with, another outrageous story. All right. Do we have questions from
Well, let me
Instagram?
just say this before we do that. The New York Times is a big, thick newspaper, and they devote a lot of space to a lot of things. And I think they can walk and chew gum at the same time. Cable news, whether I'm going to put Fox aside because they obviously will never cover this, but both CNN and MSNBC have 18 hours of live programming. Somewhere in there, you could probably jam in a segment or two about Epstein files. So that's all I'm saying. Anyway, go ahead. Let's go to the question.
I agree. Both things are true at the same time. Yep. Okay, LinkedIn, from your experience, what does prolonged secrecy do to survivors who are waiting for truth or accountability? We just had a discussion about this at our Lift Our Voices meeting earlier today. The mental health aspect of this has never really been studied, but we're going to study it, folks. Yep. We're going to develop this study this year. Here's why it's so hard to answer that question. We can say personally what it means, because Julie and I still don't own our own voices, surprisingly and shockingly, and probably never will, which is why we do the work that we do at Lift Our Voices to make sure other people do. We know the mental toll when you sit with this, from the gaslighting, from not believing yourself, from going crazy because you can't go to the mountaintops and shout out what happened to you. But the reason this is so hard to study is because the very nature of NDAs say that you can't even tell the researcher that you have one. I mean, this is how they get you. They get you because they know you can't talk about it, nor can we actually really get to the bottom of what they actually mean in our society because people can't talk about them.
You spend a lot of time at night ruminating about what happened and why the hell you got hit in the face of the frying pan. I mean, if you want to know what the mental toll is on this, just in a short, and I think Gretchen, you and I have never talked about that, but I'm sure you would agree that happens a lot. And I guarantee you talk to any survivor and they will tell you that that's what happens at 3:00 in the morning when you can't sleep. So we're going to study it, as Gretchen said. And that's a great question. Thank you for asking it. We will hopefully be able to answer that question a lot better in the next couple of months after we get it.
And I'll just say, I've told this story before, but before I finally decided to sue, almost 10 years ago now already, this July, hard to believe, my lawyers told me that I could go to my minister. And my grandfather was a minister and he had passed by that time. But, so this was a big part of my life. And she was a she. And I went and we had this amazing meeting where we went through an entire box of Kleenex together. And, being able to tell her, aside from telling my parents and my husband at that time and my lawyers, which are the only other people who knew, was so cathartic. And I'll just add in, of course, the added benefit was she said that she knew that my grandfather up in heaven was telling me that I was going to do the right thing. I mean, bring out another box of Kleenex, it was like one of the most pivotal times in my life. So if that gives any indication of how mental health could be improved from being able to get it out there and tell somebody and be believed and be validated and be told that your grandfather in heaven is telling you to do the right thing. I mean, it meant everything in the world to me. So all the more reason why we're trying to get rid of silencing mechanisms so that people can own their own stories. Do we have any other questions?
Why do you think so many people instinctively feel that something important is still being withheld in the Epstein case? Because if it wasn't, we would have had the results by now. I mean, that's where Gretchen was saying that they're so bad at crisis management. Because if they've gone to so many varying degrees to try to not have them released in the first place, to violate federal law by not releasing them when they were supposed to release them, by putting all hands on deck to redact them. Don't you think there's something in there they really don't want us to see, and it's not the names of the survivors?
I know. Yeah. According to Marjorie Taylor Greene, again, Trump has said he doesn't want to hurt people. Yeah. So, there's people, and look, back to my point, it's hurting both sides. Let's just be honest. I mean, from what's been released so far, it's actually hurting Democrats more than Republicans. It's hurting the former Obama woman. It's hurting the Goldman Sachs person who had some sort of, continued cover-up kinds of emails with Epstein. It's hurting, who was the guy up at Harvard who resigned? Prominent Treasury Secretary.
Yeah. Right? Larry Summers. But that's by design, right? They're releasing.
Well, yes, of course. Yeah. But yes, that's a good point. So what are the names that Trump does not want to release that are on the Republican side? I mean, and let's be clear, there has never been any sure, definition that Trump has done anything wrong here, criminally. But we don't know. And we know that he's, of course, in the Epstein files, because he was finally told that by his own attorney general when she suddenly put the kibosh on releasing anything. But we don't know exactly to what extent. Although one of the farmer young women had said that he had come into the room. Remember before that whole thing when she was in that room?
Yeah. I mean, look, we don't know. But what we know is this. If this were just about Larry Summers and Kathy Rumler, I am 1,000% sure that Donald Trump would not have driven Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of his biggest allies, from Congress. He wouldn't have fought so hard against the release. He wouldn't have, gone ballistic on anybody who brought up the Epstein files. He wouldn't have directed the Justice Department to go through and scrub every single instance and reference to him back in March. Come on. This is not about protecting Bill Clinton, and it's not about protecting Kathy Rumler and Larry Summers, the former Clinton Treasury Secretary and the president of Harvard. Like, let's be real about what this is all about. There's obviously somebody or somebody's on that list that the president does not want us to know about. And it's not Steve Bannon, because that stuff's already out, a lot of it. It's not allies of his in Washington, because he could always just get rid of them. It's personal. And I don't know if the personal is him or his wife or something else. But from my perspective, you don't fight that hard to protect Donald Trump certainly has never fought that hard to protect anybody other than himself, from my perspective. So we'll see. We'll find out. But we don't know. It's all speculation. And the reason it's all speculation, again, not good for the president. The reason we're all assuming it's the worst of the worst is because he has not released the Epstein files. Yep. Another enforced error.
And it kind of makes me concerned about what other huge news stories going to drop to keep averting the attention, right? I mean, it's gone too far, obviously, in Minnesota. So my home state, which my heart goes out to what's been going on there.
Let me tell you something about your home state of Minnesota for a second, a little off topic. For those of us who grew up on the East Coast or on either coast, I think when we hear about how real America, you know, Pennsylvania had the sign that got taken down because it was so offensive to people, but real America starts here. So I guess like those of us who grew up in New York or New Jersey are not real America. But I will say you guys are the heartland. I mean, you really grew up in the heartland. You grew up in the Midwest. You grew up Minnesota nice is not a joke. I've known you long enough to know it's for real. You're my Minnesota friend and you are that nice. To see what's going on in Minnesota and to see regular people standing up the way they have and just being so courageous and so brave. This is not a partisan observation. It is just an observation of tremendous respect to the people of Minnesota and how they've handled all of this. And you should be proud of your home state, Gretchen. You should be just deeply, deeply honored to be from a state like that.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I really believe
thank
that.
you. I, as you know, I still hold it very close to my heart, even though I haven't lived there full time since I was 17. But my family's still there, and I still love Minnesota, especially the Vikings. But the people, you know, I'll just point this out. Minnesota is the most altruistic state. They have more adoptions in Minnesota than any other state. My sister adopted a child, and they give more to the arts per capita than any other state. And another fun fact, besides that I grew up in the Halloween capital of the world, Anoka, Minnesota, which people don't know, it has more golf courses per capita than any other state. I know.
That never
Because
makes sense to me. It's so cold out there. How is it possible that people...
and it's covered with snow most of the time, the putting greens. But for whatever reason, we love our golf there. All right, Julie. The time just went flying by, but we appreciate everyone who tuned in today. We will not stop asking the question, where the hell are the Epstein files? And you shouldn't either.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next week.